Berserk has come a very long way. From a grimdark manga to a medieval-esque manga to a fantasy manga, the journey of Guts the Black Swordsman has gone down countless twists and turns, with new characters and stories developing all across its 31 years of publication. Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk, is famed for his incredibly detailed illustrations, though this detail comes with some, should we say, baggage? One of the better parts of this baggage is that Berserk has been able to grow and change with the times. From the 1980s to the 1990s, to the 2000s, to the 2010s, and now we're in the 2020s. With its prototype releasing in 1988, Guts' character design was completely different from how he'd come to be known, with an eye patch, simpler armor, and a meaner attitude altogether. Miura is open about his inspirations of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan the Barbarian for Guts, and for the Cenobites from Hellraiser for the original God Hand back in the 1980s. As we step into the 90s, Guts would change to a simple closed eye, more detailed, sharper armor, and a greater sense of humanity which is expanded as we learn more about him. For his youth though, Guts' character design was more atypical of manga at the time. The 90s for Berserk overall was a time of development, as characters' looks changed and altered until Miura found a comfort zone. Scouring the fan website skullknight.net, I managed to find out that Miura took some criticism to heart back in the 1990s, and actually altered a ton of character designs in Volume 5 because of it. This attitude of perfectionism is something common across the evolution of Berserk, as each volume seemingly builds and redefines the details of the last. The Golden Age, whilst following more typical designs, is in no way composed of simple drawings. In terms of artwork, it is forgotten far too often. Sometimes the relatively simpler artwork is better for things like a Guts and Casca's love scene and Guts' childhood. This early arc of Berserk has some of the most touching moments in the whole series, and the relatively simpler art that comes with it displays a great mix between simplicity for some moments and countlessly detailed work for others. It's something which you simply don't find in current Berserk, and going back to read it adds a real charm to the material. Kentaro Miura illustrated this and most of Berserk using Japanese ink and a G-pen. The flow of ink in Miura's artwork is one of the most professional I've ever seen. The amount of detail in all of his frames, with something like ink, is so impressive when you factor in there are almost never any mistakes or breaks in the line art, or any imperfections at all. At this stage of Berserk's publication, the series was releasing every 2 weeks, something which seems like a novel idea at the moment, but if we just take that fact at face value and look at some of this artwork, it can be seen how unparalleled a bi-monthly manga Berserk really was. Berserk is known for its great artwork, but that isn't something new. This has been something that was attached to the series for almost the entirety of its 30 years. The new Berserk Deluxe editions, which are printed on massive paper compared to the original volumes, really help get this point across. The hatching effects and the use of black against white are used to their most efficient by the time of the Conviction arc, and thereby the 2000s rolled by. To signify the darker nature of Guts' reality after the eclipse, but also to depict something as cataclysmic as Femto's birth ceremony, surrounded by famine, poverty, and strife. Miura once said that by the end of the Conviction arc, he finally felt like Berserk had gotten started. A crazy statement to make looking back story-wise, but in terms of the growth and evolution that the series would undergo, a surprisingly fitting one. The Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc is one of the biggest changes to Berserk's art style, which, I believe at least, cemented it as one of the best illustrated works ever created. If you pull out the first volume and then pull out the last volume of this arc and then put them side by side, the differences are almost incomparable. The character designs, the features, the backgrounds, the 2-page spreads, everything in this arc improved immensely from beginning to end. And it's insane when you factor in how good it looked to begin with. This arc saw Guts change from looking like a young man to looking like a worn-out, battle-torn soldier, which, I mean, he is. But it almost hurts to look at the difference when you factor that he's 24 years old. The double-page spreads towards the end of the arc have more characters in them, more detail on surfaces, more dynamic actions, and more flair to them than anything that came before. And yet, the Fantasia arc somehow takes the improvements that Miura made and furthers them. As the 2010s came, so did yet another age of Berserk. Though admittedly, if not even because of this increased artwork, the 2010s didn't see much in the way of Berserk releases at all. Though, to see why, we need but simply look. Look at the interiors of Falconia. From the structures of the walls itself, to the markets and armories throughout the city, the sheer amount of things going on in these panels is astounding. During this time, in 2014, Miura worked on another series in his spare time. The first time that he had worked on anything beside Berserk in about 25 years. The series, Gigantomachia, features similarly detailed work throughout its 6-chapter run. The work on this series no doubt helped Miura approach some of these locations and definitely tuned his attention to detail to its absolute max. The art style has literally gone from incredible manga to biblical levels. This immense artwork, however, would come with incrementally longer hiatuses between chapters. It's been no secret that Berserk has been releasing less and less chapters for longer than 10 years now. This would usher in another final era for the evolution of Berserk. After 27 years of Berserk, in 2016, Kentaro Miura changed from a physical manga production to a digital one. This process changed the course of Berserk's evolution in an interesting way. As one learns to draw digitally, it is, in many ways, like learning to draw for a second time, albeit a much quicker process. Miura's artwork accordingly changed, but things started looking strangely like they did around the time of the Golden Age and the Conviction arcs, with Guts adorning a clearly less rugged appearance in favour of his more youthful face. There were even a couple of panels that looked like this spitting image of something that you'd see in the Black Swordsman arc. Not that this is a complaint, it's just a byproduct of adapting to the digital method. Casca and the rest of the team looked much more like their old selves at this point as well. This change would coincidentally start on chapter 342, the very first appearance of Elfhelm, the home of Puck. Many people assumed that Miura purposefully chose to alter his art style to match the whimsical nature of the island, by making everything pop, in contrast to the gritty and realistic feel of the rest of the world. There's no denying that it's quite a fun assumption to make, that even the power of the world itself is enough to affect Miura's work. But these things are probably more tied to the fact that Miura had to change everything about his production method. This happened in 2016, and less than 4 years later, Kentaro Miura would completely shuffle the method of production yet again. In late 2019, Young Animal announced Duranki, a manga by Miura and the newly upgraded Studio Gaga, the team of people who edited the effects on Berserk, and very occasionally worked on bigger things, like The Flaw. Basically, Duranki is a separate manga that I'll be covering in another video coming soon, but this manga exists purely as a creative runway for those on the team at Studio Gaga to improve their artwork and match the level of Kentaro Miura's. The photos released around the time of this announcement show the level to which production for Berserk will change yet again, with Miura working literally next to the other artists. As the series was pretty much finding its footing in the digital landscape already, it'll be interesting to see the true repercussions of this artistic change, with a team of people now drawing Guts, Casca, Skull Knight, and more. The compromises made for the series are necessary, and whether the art quality increases or decreases because of it, this last evolution of Berserk seems to be in place as a decisive choice to ensure that Berserk reaches an actual, tangible ending. And at the end of the day, that's something that I just have to support. It's up to interpretation, of course, but in many ways I see this as the final evolution of Berserk. The only thing that could shake the series' production as much as this would be if Kentaro Miura was to fully pass on the series to another artist. And that's never going to happen because, based off of his interviews, he is very possessive of Berserk. But hey, even if that does come to pass, this video worked to focus on the evolution of Kentaro Miura's artwork alongside his own series. Now that artwork will be mixed among others, it's very likely that we are looking at the final form of Berserk. Thanks very much for watching. If you want to read the script for my next video, then please support me for $1 on Patreon, like these lovely people right here. It's only $1 tier, but if you want to put down more than that, then that's greatly appreciated as well. But hey, subscribe for more content either way, and have a wonderful day.